So today for Goals Question Time, I've got the pleasure of being joined by Sivan. Hi, Sivan.
Hi, so nice to meet you and grateful to be here, Andrew.
Great. So please introduce yourself and Xylem and you and the business. Be a great start.
All right, I'm happy to do that. My name is Sivan Zamir, and I am the lead of innovation and venture at Xylem. So, for those listeners that may not have heard of Xylem before, Xylem is a Fortune 500 company headquartered in Washington, D.C., but operates globally all over the world, and we are a leading water technology and solutions provider. When I say that, a lot of people think that I mean, uh, when I say water, that I mean filters only or water technology. They go straight to desalination. But really, water is an end market that covers anything from municipal to industrial to agricultural. We do everything from taking water from its source, moving it, treating it, measuring it, helping operators manage their systems. There's a ton of technology and innovation that goes into how water gets from its source to your tap, which I think is underappreciated today.
Yeah. No, it's a phenomenal thing, and particularly in some of the topics we're going to be covering today around climate change and water scarcity and sort of stuff like that. It's a very important area to be discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I'm passionate about personally. My background, I'm a civil engineer by way of training. I started my career as a construction manager working in large scale commercial construction management. And it took a while before I went from working in the field, really being out in industrial and infrastructure spaces, to understanding that we need to move technology along to keep up with the pace of the world's challenges. And that brought me to actually being on the founding team of a couple startup companies in the water and wastewater space in particular. So I have that perspective of being on the entrepreneurial side of things before joining a large company and leading Xylem's innovation and venture program.
Great. Okay, so the innovation and venturing sort of program, can you tell us the sort of problems that it's trying to solve and what's the purpose about why you're there running that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main problem is in terms of the challenge that we're trying to address is that Xylem's vision, mission, purpose is to really empower our customers and communities to address climate change and all of the water issues that we experience as climate change. And yet, when we talk about climate, water is severely under-discussed and under-invested, whereas actually most climate change is experienced by too much water. We see all of the hurricanes and flood events that are happening, or too little water, where you've got not enough water in certain areas, even here in the United States, like in the Central Valley in California. So we really want to make sure that we are bringing the conversation together around climate to also include the water space. Even though climate tech investment has gone up in recent years, and this year it's cooled off just a little bit, but when you look at the numbers, only 3% of climate tech investment is actually focused on water.
Mhm.
So what we're trying to do at Xylem is make sure that we are expanding that conversation and also bringing those best technologies to the market to help build a water secure world. So that's the mission, that's the why that we have as an organization and where technology and innovation fits into that.
Great. And so what's the process you go through with your incubator and the venturing? Sort of how are you structured and what's the process you go through?
Yeah. So on the process that we go through, it really starts on market needs. One of the things that I've found in the innovation and venture world is oftentimes you'll create this centralized group, and that centralized group will go look for technologies that match up with market trends. And then they'll select a couple of interesting things and bring them back to the operating company or the parent company and try to introduce those company technologies around. Well, for anyone who's tried that approach, there's a lot of resistance in the organization to that. And so, what we decided to do when we set up our corporate innovation and venture team, which is called Xylem Innovation Labs, is to meet all of our customers and our colleagues where they are, understand deeply what their challenges are that they're trying to address, the needs, and from there, take them along with us on that journey to then go look for the best of the best technologies that are out there. So we've set up this really great very robust open innovation network and platform to enable us to do that with a lot of different partners, including venture capital partners. So we do operate as a fund of funds. Once we find those technologies, we bring them through an annual partnerships accelerator that we've set up. That partnerships accelerator kind of puts these companies through a corporate boot camp, if you will, or a corporate crash course to teach them what is it like to partner with a big company like Xylem. And not a lot of founders know that. I know that from my own experience in the past, I didn't always know how to operate with a big company, how to navigate. So quite literally, our first session, or one of our first sessions, is about navigating Xylem. And we walk them through how to navigate the company, how we're set up, how we're structured, how we're organized, so that they get a sense in their own mind when they're working with different people where they sit in that organization. So something as simple as that with that transparency is super helpful in terms of creating those partnerships. So we run this partnerships program as another element of our innovation and venture work.
And you're an investment fund. Do you invest in the startups and that as well as part of your process?
Yes. So in addition to the Open Innovation Network, we also have this partnerships accelerator that I mentioned, which is meant to really figure out which technologies and companies, frankly, because you're doing a partnership, right? It's not just about the technology. It's very much about the people, which I know one of the chapters in your book is all about people. And so it's about also making sure that it's the right type of partner for us as an organization to work with. The companies that do well and go through that program, there's a lot of different ways that you can partner with Xylem. It's not a one size fits all. It could be through a licensing deal, a private labeling deal, reselling, joint venture, could be a qualification for a qualified M&A pipeline. And there's also venture investing or equity investment as one of those tools in the toolkit, if you will. So where we differentiate a little bit from some other corporate venture capital groups is that we use our corporate venture investing to do a couple of things. One is to operate as a fund of funds, so invest in other venture capital firms in geographic markets and also in technically adjacent markets that are areas of interest for us to help us with that deal flow and those market insights and that due diligence. And then we sometimes also make direct equity investments in companies as a lever to strategically align ourselves with them if they've gone through our partnerships program and all's progressing well.
Great, great. And people, as you said, it's central in my book of the 5 Ps. So tell us a bit more about the people in your team, where they're located, what's their sort of backgrounds, and how they can build those partnerships.
The team itself is incredibly diverse. And when I say diverse, I mean from all the different areas of diversity. We, of course, have gender diversity and cultural diversity, but we also have diversity in terms of academic background, people with all different kinds of subject matter expertise, also different professional expertise. We've got folks from inside the company that have made their way through the product management and R&D organizations, as well as from the commercial teams. We also have people that come from outside of the organization that have experience in venture capital, working with nonprofits, universities, government agencies, and former startup founders like myself. So it's really a true inside-outside team. We also have folks located in different countries that helps us operate at a global scale to be able to regionally travel in different areas as well as match up with different time zones, and then have that cultural context and understanding as well. So there's a lot of diversity throughout the group. When I talk about people, though, one of the things I like to really focus on is that it's not just about the people in the innovation or the venture team. They're not going to be the ones to make this thing happen. In order to get technology to market, commercialization, and getting it in the hands of the customers to make the intended impact that it's supposed to make is the crux of it all. Otherwise, you've got great technology potentially that's sitting on a shelf. And so one of the big things and the big lifts we've done as we've built up Xylem Innovation Labs is to make sure that the team is structurally and culturally integrated across the entire business. So an example of that, we started a professional development program called Innovation Champions. And every year we have 50 colleagues that sign up to be paired with one of the startups that go through our accelerator program. And in that way, the startup companies get exposure to different perspectives and feedback across the company. And those people inside the company get the experience culturally of working alongside this very agile startup.
Yeah,
So now year
that's
over
so important.
year,
That's so
yeah,
important, isn't it? That communication, as you touched on, and that earlier, it's as much teaching your corporate about how startups work, how these technologies work, and bringing that entrepreneur inside into your organization as well is so important.
absolutely. And it creates this cultural shift because now they've got experience. And over the years, nothing happens quickly in a large company, but over the years, these people now shift throughout the organization into different roles in different places. And suddenly you've got this upskilled organization that knows how to partner with entrepreneurs. We say a lot on the team that and it's a famous quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so really making sure that we institute that cultural change and people get credit for working alongside the startups. It's not a side project, it's a core element of what they do that they get recognition for, is a really important part of creating that cultural change across the company.
So you have buy-in from the board, and who do you report to in the board level, sort of stuff like that? How is that people interaction within the organization?
Yes, we have absolute support from our board of directors, from our senior leadership team, from our CEO, Matthew Pine, who came into the CEO role earlier this year. I directly report to our Chief Growth and Innovation Officer, Snehal Desai, that came over to Xylem through the Evoqua acquisition last year. It's really been a phenomenal experience in terms of seeing how Xylem and all of the leadership, including the colleagues, have embraced this idea of corporate innovation and venture and really institutionalized it in how we operate.
Mm. Oh, fantastic. No, it's a great image and great description there of how you brought those things together. And
Yeah.
partners you've touched on quite a bit in terms of the acceleration within your organization. Any other partners you think have been important? The funds you've invested in, the other sort of technology partners, and any partners that have come to mind you can elaborate on?
All of them.
Yeah,
All of them, and
yeah,
I'll name a few. When I think about partners, I don't think just about the open innovation partners or about the technology partners. I think about the partners throughout the entire innovation journey. There is a gentleman named Paul O'Callahan, and he's the head of Blue Tech Research, which is a boutique water research firm. And he wrote a book called The Dynamics of Innovation in the Water Sector. And in that, he's got this really lovely visual that I like to think of the innovation journey, which is like a baton that's being passed along in a relay race. And so you've got the baton, which is the technology or this startup, and it's being passed from the folks that are first doing that ideation and development work and then figuring out your product market fit, taking it to market, and then all the way through diffusing that innovation to the late majority and the laggards. And so if you think about it in that way, he gives a visual of that the most critical points is that handover of the baton between
yeah,
the
yeah.
different stakeholders in that relay race. And so we have partners for every step of that relay. We've got our startup partners that are the ones that are out there thinking about different ways of solving critical water challenges. We've got open innovation partners that actually help us access those different technologies because there's no way that our team of under a dozen people is going to be able to look at thousands of companies every year. In order to scale, we've got to scale exponentially through partnerships. So some of those partners include Burnt Island Ventures. They're an early stage venture capital investor in water and wastewater, the most active one in the market today. So we're an anchor limited partner in their fund. We're also an investor in the Wesley Group, which is a prolific climate tech venture capital investor that I'm sure you're familiar with
Yeah,
in Silicon Valley. And we're also an investor in water equity. That's a recent investment that we just announced a little over a month ago that really helps us have an eye on decentralized and remote communities and making sure that we understand what technologies are being adopted in the wash space.
Okay, no, great. And the final P out of my five Ps, we've been through your purpose, we've been through the process, the people, the partners, the performance measure. What are the performance measures that you can sort of say that you're doing? Because I find in so many other corporate venture incubation units, the corporate turn says, well, how much revenue did you bring me last year? But this is a longer journey. So I'm just
It's a
interested.
fair question, right? Like,
Yeah. But it's a different timescale and dynamic, isn't it? As you talked about right from the start, the corporate timescale and the startup timescale in terms of getting revenues or getting technology proven and sort of stuff like that, they're on different sort of time clocks. And you talk very powerfully about getting that culture right, but the performance measures are going to be a bit different between your typical corporate colleagues on how much sales per quarter have they had or per annum compared to yours of, well, you've seen so many ventures and you've invested in some, but you're not going to get a payback for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or sort of stuff like that. So, what sort of performance measures are you really, focused on?
I think it's a fair question. I also think it's a fair question, made by the leadership in terms of the revenue that's generated, because at the end of the day, it is a for-profit, publicly listed company. It's not a nonprofit, so we've got to contribute to
Yeah.
driving that growth, as innovative as we might be. And so the real impact, like we talked about before, is how do you make it to the marketplace? So definitely revenue, one of our metrics, one of our targets. Where we might slightly differ from traditional corporate venture capitals is that in addition to making those investments as a fund of funds, as well as direct equity investments, we also have some more direct control over that revenue generation because we are partnering with companies as a proxy or as a supplement to our internal R&D work. So we are actually the channel to market for many of those technologies. So we do have a lever there in order to be able to generate some near and midterm revenue streams through those partnerships. But that being said, that's one marker, right? There's other ways of measuring your performance. Another measure is definitely partners. Those are process targets of ours, partnerships formed, the number of companies that we've scouted and looked through. There's the purpose-driven markers as well of how do we drive a culture of innovation and collaboration. So how many hundreds of people have gone through this Innovation Champions, program as well. So there's different elements in there, but beyond those high level metrics, it's also thinking about what are the trade-offs that are being made. We as a large company or any large company is not going to develop the end all be all of every single technology that entire sector needs. So we have to be able to, in addition to the wonderful internal R&D work going on, we've got thousands of very sophisticated engineers that work for the organization. In addition to that, how do we stretch and reach outside of the company to innovate through partnerships? And how do we look at those timescales differently? How long would it take us to develop something ourselves? How much would we have to invest ourselves in order to develop that thing? And in our make partner buy analysis, does it make sense to look outside the company? Because even though, to your point, Andrew, about taking 3 or 5 years to get to market, well, some of these companies have already invested tens of millions of dollars in their development and been around in a decade. And we're coming in at kind of the 11th hour there to partner with them and then be that channel to market through their growth stage. So we are cutting off quite a bit of the time scale there by intersecting and partnering later on in their journey.
Great.
Back to the relay race.
Yeah. Well, it'd be great to get a couple of examples of the ventures you've got, really. And I suppose to give a little bit of context to it, we talked through the 5 Ps, but the subtitle of my book was Innovative New Value Chains, which meant that, which I believe was around how a new technology is going to change the value chain within an industry, which could disrupt the traditional sort of industries. So, I took a bunch of executives to Tesla in 2008 when their first electric Lotus sort of type design car was there, and I was saying to the executives there from oil companies and car companies and power generating businesses, look, your businesses are going to be disrupted because for these electric vehicles, you're going to want clean energy, and there's a new engineering in these devices, and the interaction with the consumer is very different. And when they become autonomous, whole industries are going to be cut out. So I just wonder whether are there any, and it's difficult. It's almost like picking your favorite child, or I'm not asking for that, but just some examples of some of the ventures or some of the processes that you've looked for in Xylem Innovation Labs that you think are more disruptive to those value chains?
All right. It's not my favorite, or not only my favorite, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples,
Please,
and then I'm
please.
going to tell you a couple of areas that I'm excited about where I don't have specific examples yet.
Okay, great. No, it'd be good. Yeah,
All right.
please.
Okay. So, in terms of the couple of examples, just thinking about how do we change the paradigm of how we work, agree with you 100%. We need to constantly be thinking about not only technologies from a portfolio perspective or product perspective or from a service enabling perspective, but also how do we change around our business models and how we think about doing business. So, to that end, we had one company, they're based in Germany, called EOMAP, that went through our very first Partnerships Accelerator program when we launched in 2022. EOMAP is a small company that does satellite remote sensing. So they leverage satellite data in order to look at entire watersheds and be able to tell you the quality of the water in those watersheds. So whether this is coastal environments or reservoirs or oceans, you can work with a lot of different types of institutes and environmental protection agencies leveraging this technology. So bringing that into Xylem, well, you would think, could that disrupt our business of in situ environmental sensors? But in fact, when you pair them together, you actually get something much more powerful. You're able to give your customers a holistic view of what's happening in their watershed, generate software as a service revenue, be able to pinpoint hot areas where you potentially should be getting some higher fidelity data, and actually then you generate pull through of your own portfolio of solutions and are able to deploy additional sensors. So when you think differently, you're able to pair new technologies and maybe some of your incumbent or your legacy solutions together to create a much more powerful value proposition for your customers.
Great. Good example. Yeah, yeah. Other
That's one of
sectors?
them. The second one is we can't do a podcast without talking about artificial intelligence. So it's an AI-based software platform, and what they do, they're called Transcend. And Transcend is able to take input data in terms of what your parameters are for designing a wastewater treatment plant, and effectively overnight go through all the different variations of what that wastewater treatment plant design could look like, all the way up to helping spec out instrumentation or equipment that would go into that plant. Whereas doing that manually, leveraging engineering services might take you weeks, if not months, to get to that point. Here, you're leveraging AI and the machine learning models of AI in order to figure out what your top handful of options are. So when you do that, sounds cool, but how does that impact your actual business model? Well, now your Xylem, very large global water and wastewater technology and solutions provider, and you can broaden your funnel of opportunities because you can quote many more opportunities using the same person power that you have in the organization. And you can also accelerate the velocity of that sales funnel or pipeline because you can get back to customers much quicker. So even assuming that your win rate remains the same, that is a paradigm shift as well in terms of how you think about business models for the organization. And again, it's that value proposition for the customer where you're getting back to them and serving them much faster in much quicker succession to meet their needs.
No, perfect. Great examples. And I think you said you've got some other areas that you'd really love to get into, but you're not quite there yet with the
Not
innovation.
quite there yet in terms of having folks that I can pinpoint and mention out loud, but a couple of the areas that I'm really excited about. I mean, we did talk about satellite sensing, and there's also flood prediction addressing climate change. Climate change is a big theme or area that we're thinking about, of course. Emerging contaminants is another one. And the other couple that I'm spending some additional time on right now is resource recovery. So how do we look at water, not just as something that needs to be managed or treated, but actually as a very valuable resource of nutrients and of minerals. So you could extract different types of nutrients from wastewater, which is normally seen as an icky thing, but you can take those nutrients out, you can upcycle that into different types of fertilizer, creating new revenue streams with agricultural clients, as an example. You could also extract things like valuable metals like lithium which we know is a very valuable resource as well. So that's one area I'm excited about. And the other is thinking about data centers, and how are we going to be able to support the energy transition continuing to be more and more focused on renewables when we've got AI, like we said, right? We've got AI
Mhm.
and you've got more data centers that are needed, hence more energy that's needed. And by the way, what's the limiting factor on energy? Well, very much water is a limiting factor in the energy production area. So thinking about the different technologies and the suite of solutions you need in order to be able to accommodate the rapid pace of change of the energy transition to conserve energy, and yet we've got artificial intelligence, which is using much more energy. And how do you balance those?
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. No, that's been great. That's been a fantastic story, fantastic journey there, telling us about Xylem, and I think really bringing water to the front. As I said right at the beginning, I think it's been understated, and you said it's been understated in that as well. But when you cover all the areas that you've been covering with Xylem Innovation Labs, that's been fascinating to see. So, thanks very much for sharing your insights with us all today. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you. I appreciate the time and thanks for the opportunity.